Hi everyone. As promised, this time I'm back with another episode, another success factor, which has helped my Atalantas to succeed and trailblaze, paving the way for many more Atalantas. Before we begin, a very warm welcome to all of you and a very warm welcome to the new subscribers who have joined more recently. I hope you got a chance to listen into my wise story and to know who Atlanta is. If not, maybe just click into my introductory episode. It's not even 3 minutes long. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all my listeners. Thank you to all of you for your ongoing support. My heartfelt thanks to my Atalantas who have partnered with me in this journey and brought their authentic and vulnerable selves into these conversations. I receive feedback from many of you who could resonate with perseverance as a success factor. Thank you for this feedback. Thank you for sharing how I can make it better. Thank you for giving all your inputs. And before we move to our next success factor, let's pause and reflect. Did you set any goals for yourself? If yes, how did you fare in those goals? And if not, maybe you want to go back to episode 84. A quick recap about perseverance and how did it show up when we talked about it last time. Perseverance is about recognizing that self-doubt is natural. Imposter syndrome happens to all of us. Sometimes it's just good to be strategic about the challenges which we might address. Embracing fear, sometimes dealing with it just by committing to it and trusting the process. And back to today, let's move to the next success factor, which is building allyship and mentorship. Before I start talking about my Atalantas, I am compelled to share a personal story. One which I felt was perhaps a stroke of serendipity or maybe just a happy coincidence. When I moved to the US almost 5 years back, I was definitely lonely. I barely knew any people, and professionally, my career had come to a bit of a standstill. And I resorted to LinkedIn. I went and looked for all my connections from my school, my business school, and I landed up connecting with one of my seniors from school who, even now when I think about it, I felt very comfortable with. I reached out to her after almost 30 years and had a very heartwarming conversation with her. And we decided to keep these conversations going. Moving on, as I started researching different podcasts, I landed up listening to and really enjoying this podcast called Coaching for Leaders. I listened to a conversation with Ruth Kotian, who had written this book called Success Factors. The book really intrigued me and I picked it up right away. And what stood out was the importance of having a solid foundation through a board of mentors. And what I reflected was that while I love mentoring and of course coaching, I did not really have a formal mentor myself. Yes, my husband has been a huge support, my honest critic, and my biggest cheerleader, but I did not have a formal mentor. I do believe that sometimes we just have to trust our instincts, and I reached out to Seema and I asked her if she will be my mentor. Seema agreed, and I've got myself a formal mentor. These days, I rarely make a big decision without running it by Seema. And she's also one of my Atalantas. And you can listen to our conversation on episode 62. While Seema is my formal mentor, when I started Atlanta Diaries, something which was way out of my comfort zone, I turned to reverse mentoring. I had a tribe of mentors, which consisted of my 2 sons, my Gen Z coachees and mentees. And their perspectives were really invaluable in this journey. And this takes me to my second success factor, which is building allies and mentorship. Let's see how mentors and building allies have helped all my Atalantas succeed and thrive in their journeys. I'm going to share with you snippets from my conversation with Diane, who was the Chief Information Officer of Johnson Controls, and had a very interesting perspective on mentorship, something perhaps we take for granted, a blind spot. Diane shared that, business and career are such big parts of who we are, and having a partner who recognizes it is really important. Her perspective was that people often think that mentors need to come from the business world and that you just need one mentor. She believed that you can have many mentors, and she compared it to angels watching over us. Her husband, she believes, knows her better than anybody else and will probably say things to her that nobody else will, which is exactly what we want from a mentor: candid advice and judgment-free advice. So from Diane's perspective, her best mentor who gave her real honest advice was her husband. Diane also talked about her work with T200, a global network of female technology executives dedicated to advocating for and supporting women in technology. Along with 5 other female CIOs, Diane started T200 when they just met over a formal meal, and they realized the incredible strength and influence they all had collectively. Today, they've grown to about 250 female CIOs from around the world, and they regularly collaborate. They have a private channel where any of them can ask for help, whether it's preparing for a board pitch or finding insights on a supplier. They advocate for each other, they share solutions, and they lift each other up. I thought the story of T200 is a wonderful reminder of what women can accomplish when they come together and support one another. If you want to listen to my entire conversation with Diane, you can click on episode 78 of Atlanta Diaries. I want to share some very insightful perspectives from Vedika Bhandarkar's conversation. She is now the president and CEO of Water.org, and earlier was the vice chairperson and managing director of Credit Suisse. I shared with her some of the learnings from a survey I had conducted before I started Atlanta Diaries. And one of the things that struck me about the survey, and I wanted to get her views, was that a lot of women said or believe that men have to just state and women have to convince. This is how Vedika answered me. She said, the way I've seen it manifesting is that when a woman says something, it doesn't register with people. And the same point, if it is made by a man, or it's even paraphrased by a man, everybody says, oh, what a smart thing to say. Vedika recalled an experience from one of the boards she served on, where she had been repeatedly suggesting an evaluation system for leaders that included internal audit ratings. I had been saying this for quite some time, she had shared with me, but the idea just wasn't getting enough traction. And then during a recent meeting, a male board member brought up the exact same suggestion, and it finally gained attention and everybody's approval. But what struck Vedika was an act of unexpected allyship. The chief internal auditor, who is also a woman, turned around and said, and yes, Vedika has been suggesting this for a while. This public acknowledgement from a colleague was a moment of validation and allyship that Vedika deeply reflected. And I thought that was so powerful. Be an ally. Whether it's an internal meeting or an external one, we need to look out for each other and lift each other up. She did share with me that when she was younger, responses might not be in the best possible manner. Sometimes she would get very upset when she would, experience a situation like this. She was sharing that she would come back, sometimes raving and ranting, and even crying about it. She then said that you have to look out for yourself without getting emotional. You need to make the point again and sort of remind everybody that this was you. What she was trying to say was, be your own cheerleader. And if you want to listen to my conversation with Vedika, it's episode 44. Let's move to Asha Kharga, the Chief Customer and Brand Officer and a member of the Group Executive Board of the Mahindra Group. Asha shared that she had a tribe of mentors, and she believed that each and every one of them offered unique perspectives throughout her career. She believed that because they have different journeys and they have different personalities, they share different insights, and that's what made her what it is. I love the story which Asha shared. There was a central role at Unilever to launch their sustainability program, and Asha was offered that role. Obviously, that role was far removed from the marketing roles she had been excelling in. And all her friends and peers were telling her it was a bad idea. Who even understands sustainability? Who cares about it? But when she reached out to one of her mentors, he gave her a completely different perspective that changed the course of her decision. He told her, a career is 40 years long. If you decide to do 2 or 3 years off the beaten path, it can only add to your experience. You're going to be reporting directly to the CEO of Hindustan Levers. Imagine the leadership skills you learn just by observing how decisions are made at the highest level. It is not an opportunity about building your technical skills. It's an opportunity about building those high order skills. And in Asha's words, there's a life before that role and there's a life after that role. If you want to listen to my conversation with Asha, you can go to episode 47. Last but not the least is a story of Annette Clayton, who was the CEO of Schneider Electric and now is on the board of many other organizations. When I asked Annette if she had any mentors, formal or informal, and who were her role models, the answer was yes. But she also moved on to sharing that some of her most valuable mentoring experience was when she was mentoring and being mentored at the same time. In her words, young people have a different perspective on the company and even on the values of the organization. And she believed that this really helped her to frame not only her language, but it also became more relevant to the millennials, the Gen Zs, and the Gen X. And it really allowed her to think about what she was doing as a leader and is it relevant to the changing organization. She also spoke about peer mentors, and she believed that they had a lot of value in helping her understand how she should perceive and how much influence and impact she's having amongst the peer group and how she can adapt and adjust. She also spoke about the only female mentor she had in her career, and that was really early on. She shared that that was probably one of the best piece of advices she got from a mentor. Her mentor was a Black female working in a primarily male industry. And the piece of advice she gave Annette was that when you're getting a piece of feedback as you're developing professionally, you need to assume it's because you need it. And I know that sounds pretty simple. That sounds very obvious. And it would be easy to assume, oh, that you're getting this feedback because you're a female or because you're a minority. But if you start from the position of, I'm getting this feedback because I need it, then you never lose the opportunity to onboard it. And I have shared this perspective of Annette's with so many clients because as we traverse that leadership journey, taking feedback and embracing feedback is one of the most difficult parts of leadership and interpersonal skills. At times we take feedback personally. At times we give feedback in a manner that the other person feels attacked. So I think this perspective of feedback, which Annette shared, was very meaningful and very relatable with many people, including myself. In fact, she shared a very interesting anecdote, and I thought that was another powerful perspective to mentoring. She shared with me that she was dealing with a particular peer who was very strong in the company. And she was not able to understand how to deal with that peer. And guess what she did? She took this person's CFO as her own mentee. So she lobbied to get this particular individual as a mentee. And then through those conversations, she figured out how she should manage this peer. Of course, she learned a lot about, the market, the organization, and how to grow the business. But this strategic move really helped her to have a better relationship with the colleague who she was really struggling with. If you want to listen to my conversation with Annette, you can click on episode 43. These 4 are just a glimpse into the many examples within Atlanta Diaries where mentorship and allyship have been absolutely transformative. Let's build networks to uplift each other. Let's watch each other's backs. Bringing in mentors pushes us out of a comfort zone. It gives us a completely new perspective. Taking those risks that reshape our careers, taking those risks that help us to sometimes grow our careers in a manner that we never imagined. Allyship in critical moments. And yes, most importantly, to have a mentor, you don't have to look for somebody from your own tribe. You don't have to look for somebody who is older than you, and you don't have to look for somebody who is another female. It could be another male. It could be your own partner. It could be, somebody from your family, and it could be somebody from another industry. Last time we spoke about perseverance, and this time we shifted gears to explore the power of mentorship and building allies. So before we end these musings, take a moment to reflect. Who are your mentors and allies? Have you been meaning to connect with somebody who you think can add value to your journey and you're hesitating? Or can you be a stronger ally to somebody else in your team, somebody in your family? Can you be a cheerleader for maybe your niece, maybe your sister, maybe your team member? If the answer to any of them is yes, go ahead and take that big step. Also, if these stories resonate with you, or if you know of someone who could probably need that safe space but doesn't know what that means, do share these reflections with them. Next time, we'll dive into vulnerability and understand how being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. How vulnerability can help us build trust and those strong relationships. Until then, keep nurturing your relationships, keep seeking out mentors, and more importantly, be an ally to someone else who you feel can gain from your journey. Just remember, no one succeeds alone. And don't stop persevering. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next month with my next success factor, which is vulnerability.